Hey guys, Boomfish TCG here, back at it again with another video. This time we're going to be taking a look at regular mages. I know I've talked about it a few times on the channel. It is a relatively popular option in the format, and when I was originally at BCS Toronto, there was a decent representation of this, and most recently, I believe it was Germany. This was the most popular rune variant that competed at all in the tournament, at least for, you could say, within the top 20. There were 3 rune decks, and they were all regular mage. And I only saw 1 omen mage, but I could start digging a little bit more. So it is quite good. I do think that there's a lot of variation between people's lists. And on top of that, I do think it has weak matchups. I do think it can struggle going second. But when it gets its engine running and it has opportunity to really play its game plan, the deck is very strong, and I do think it is unique and fun. So we're going to get into that. Starting off, we're going to talk about Beast-Faced Mage. This might be a little bit surprising, because if you took a quick gander from the deck list, there is no dirt engine in the deck itself. So the magic sediment token might seem a little bit of dead weight, but the deck doesn't actually care if that sediment token's on the field, because it doesn't really swarm out as you would expect. So it kind of, like, when a Beast Face Mage dies, the magic sediment token is simply there for the next Beast Face Mage, and when that happens, that's really good. You are perfectly in your own right to believe that this card isn't worth it, but usually the concept behind this is to have a cheap mage to put on the board, so then you have 2 mages on the board, and synergies can proc with that. But it is not very high impact. In Dirt, this is like a crazy card, right? Because it just does everything the deck wants. Here, it's simply a cheap mage, and it has some upside to it. So that's pretty good. We have Riven Earth. It is a really cool card. I'm gonna be honest. When I was playing regular mages for 12-13, it was simply okay, right? Like, it came out, and I wasn't actually that happy with it, because the deck was kind of slower, putting more 3 costs in the deck. And you didn't really need this kind of effect. You took advantage of a bunch of different cards. But in this one, this is really solid, because you will have the numbers, right? You will have the 2 mage followers early enough, and 4 damage is significant. The burn helps you get to your endgame. So yeah, this is really good. This deck is very much a burn deck. 2 is about as much, because again, it doesn't draw cards, doesn't generate tokens, or blah blah blah, whatever else I could say. It's simply a decent ping spell with upside. It's not a quick, that's just how it is. And we do have a separate engine in here, which I'll move on to right now. The Linkle engine. So we have Scourge of the Omniscient, and we also have Rite of the Ignorant. So these are 2 pieces of the Linkle package, because they're Arcana spells. So they each have a condition where they cannot be played from the EX area, and then they also have end phase effects attached to them. When you play them initially for 1 mana, you can give your leader +2 life, and if there's a Linkle the Fool on the field, it's then put into the EX, which is very strong. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have Scourge of the Omniscient, which in most circumstances is the better of the 2, although cycling is valuable. Being able to deal technically 3 damage within the same turn if you have a Linkle on the field, and then you can play this, I do think is kind of crazy. And the pings on each end phase set up for very easy lethals for your deck to be able to get towards. So I do think it's very strong. And yeah, for 1 mana, for all of this goodness, if you get that off, is crazy. Another aspect of this, and this is a bit fast forwarding in the deck list, is we're going to talk about the Scourges, like the Linkle spells and their interactions with, let's say, Crystal Fencer. When you are putting a spell from hand into the EX area to play for 3 less, sometimes you don't actually have to play the card to get its value. For most instances, the best version of this will be through Grimoire Sorcerer, because it's going to be early game. You're not going to necessarily need the maximum amount of value out of your Grimoire. And when you can set up by putting, let's say, Rite of the Ignorant or Scourge of the Omniscient into the EX area from hand, that card cannot be played, but you have effectively cheated that card into your EX area. And this card doesn't care how it got there. You will get the end phase effects. And if by turn 2, going second, if for some reason you want to do this, you put Scourge of the Omniscient from your hand into the EX, fantastic. We're really happy about that. But the opposite side, so that's an opportunity where you have Scourge or the other card in your hand, and you don't mind that you don't have Linkle. But if you don't have either of those options, these cards are quite dead. So this is the bad side of these cards. But as I will show you, Linkle has a huge payoff. So not only is this a 2-mana 2/2, which is decent stats, not only does it take a look at the top 5 and potentially grab 2 of them, but when you Evo her, you can not once per turn when playing an Arcana spell, select an enemy follower and deal it 3 damage. That is good. That is powerful, but it is a bit clunky. I have found that specifically with Linkle, the most secure option that you can have before you actually committing Linkle to the board is by having at least one of the spells in your hand. If you have none, you're kind of shooting in the dark. And with Shadowverse, about 50% of the time, or maybe a little bit less than that, you won't be hitting a single card off of this. And at that point, kind of blows a bunch of chunks. But when you play this early, let's say you did have that one in your hand, and then you did hit another one off the top, or you hit 2, whatever. And then going second, you aggressively Evo it. If your opponent cannot remove this Linkle in this instance, while this still stayed on the board, I would highly expect that you are winning the game. Being able to set up 3 Linkle spells by the end of your turn 3, and then also proccing this effect to deal 9 damage to the board total, is crazy. I do think that's very high impact, but you are jumping through a few hoops in order to get there. Linkle's an honest package. Nothing surprises the opponent. They both know that you have them, and when you play the Linkle, chances are you already have one in hand. You just have to see how much they respect this. If you leave this un-evoed on turn 2 and your opponent doesn't remove it, and they had the opportunity to, but they're using it to generate their own tempo, it's a huge punish on your part in order to set up your spells and ping their board. But that's on them, man. This is totally, I do think this is a balanced strategy, and it takes a lot of experience to know exactly how to take advantage of it, but it's very strong. A card that I'm not the biggest fan of, I was a really big fan of this in regular mages, because you struggled a lot in order to get 2 mages on the board. But here, I'm not the biggest fan. Be your own judge, but yeah, we'll find it out as we go. So this is a 2-mana, spell chain 5, recover 2 play points. Okay. In that good scenario, in this spell slinging deck, this can be a free card, right? It pays for itself. Gotcha. And then when you Evo for 1, you can ping something on the board for 2, and if you have 5 mage followers in your cemetery, draw a card. That's okay. 5 mage followers takes some setup, so it will take some time in order for you to do that, and chances are when you're using this ping effect, it's early game, so that part's not even relevant. But the idea is, it's a mage that pays for itself, and you don't actually have to worry about the second body. It just simply generates itself. And as you saw with, let's say, Beastface Mage, that's really all you care about in this deck. So it's quite good. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan because I like to fit more high impact cards in my deck. And better spells options, like more diverse, but it's fine. We have Grimoire, which is definitely a staple in this deck. Easy 3 of. 2 mana, 2/2, you know, whatever. But if you followed the Omen Mage deck list, you might be surprised to see that this is at 3 Evos. But this effect is quite crazy. And especially in regular mages, this is part of the core of the deck. They need 3 of this, they need 3 of this. There's no option here. It's just what needs to happen. So yeah, very, very good. Being able to discount spells in a spell slinging deck, say less. Moving on, Fire Chain. This is where I certainly divert from this person's list. In my opinion, I think Fire Chain at 3 is really strong, hard to fit in. I do think Fire Chain at 2 is absolutely a staple. If I could run 3 of it in my list, I would, but the deck does get tight at some point. This is 2 mana, deal 3 damage divided between 2 targets. It can be 1, it can be a full 3 damage, but when you're up against your weak matchups, which, what might those be? Hard aggro. Fire Chain demolishes them. If you're up against Haven aggro, by the time turn 2 hits and you're going first, you will kill 2 things on their board. Their whole tempo against you is just poof, it's just gone. And I think Fire Chain's incredible for that. Feel free to pick that as a different ratio or a different option entirely, but I am a huge fan of this card. Moving on to the 3 costs, we have Scorching Blast. This card initially came out in set 11, and it was not loved, folks. Regular mages didn't run this card because it's way too clunky and expensive. But in this, Scorching Blast is actually incredible, I'm going to be honest. 5 damage to something is ginormous. It lets you deal with problem cards when you try to get outstatted on the board. And especially when you can pair that with your Yukishima turns, it's incredible. 1 of is fine because you could search it. And if you can bring this back with Merlin Evo, say less. You know, like, all upside with this card. I do really enjoy it. But it's never going to be at more than a 1 of because, again, it's quite clunky. Again, this is if we had to pick 4 or 5 cards to say the core of the deck's identity is, Story of a Lifetime is 100% that. This card is incredible. 3 mana, taking a look at the top 4 cards of your deck, you pick 2 and then you dump 2. This is one of the ways you get your followers in your grave, easily taking advantage of the fact that you can dump Beast Phase Mage when you do not care and it's past turn 3. Or you can dump excess Chaos Wielders, which you don't need, and you feel perfectly fine getting rid of. And then on top of that, if you have Yukishima on the board, you can recover 1 play point. I do think that's quite rare. When I was playing this originally in an Omen Mage list, that did happen a lot, and I was very happy. And you could take advantage of that because the deck really just generates so much value. But the fact that you don't care about that kind of effect all that often is quite crazy because a lot of decks would bend over backwards for that. But in this, because it pairs so well with, let's say, Grimoire Sorcerer Evo, or the card we're moving on to next, which would be Crystal Fencer. So, simple draw discard when you play it, but when you Evo it, it's yet another way to put a card from hand into EX and discount it. A lot of your turns going second is going to be a Crystal Fencer on 3. You Evo, put Story of a Lifetime in the EX, and you just do that. And then you're probably going to do this 2 to 3 or like 2 to 3 times during the entire game. And you need to do that in order to win. This card is insanely powerful. Enough where you're fine paying the full cost, but when you get to do it for free like 2 times, it's incredible. Just really, really, really good. And not discounting Crystal Fencer, it's an easy 3 of. It's part of your discard engine, so you get your cards engraved when you need them. Very, very, very good. We then have Truth's Adjudication. So it is another one of the spells that you take advantage of. And since you're playing a mage deck, whoa, crazy, wow. Who knew that you would have the synergies active for this card? Incredible. When you get to draw 3, ping something for 2, or deal 3 damage to your opponent's face when you need to, I mean, there's nothing to complain about here, folks. This is incredible. A easy 3 of, and same thing as in Omen Mages, like a very abusable card. Awesome. The last spell of the deck is going to be Chain Lightning. This is how you end games, and you will appreciate it. It's not necessarily the most live card in your hand in early turns, but you do need this to get there, and being able to play it multiple times in a turn is absolutely relevant. So, yeah, this card's crazy. 100%. I'm glad it exists in the game, because it fixes a lot of problems for these funky little rune decks that have a hard time just dealing burst damage. When you can deal 8 damage in one turn, you're feeling really happy. So, yeah, 100% good. We have Daria. Unlike in Omen Mages, right? This is still a really good card, but you do not get the activatable effect, the second half of this card, nearly as early as you need it. Okay? I am not discounting how good Daria is for the deck. I'm not discounting how good this card is in general, but it's a stark difference between the strategies. Omen Mages is a massive burst damage deck that just vomits hard stats onto the board and forces your opponent to deal with. If they can't, they straight up lose the game. But it's risky. You run through a lot of cards, and it does take a lot more instances of chance than what this deck does. If you honestly, because this deck is relatively honest in what it does, if you honestly get your numbers there in regular mages, this is almost more powerful than what it is in Omen Mages. You are not doing an Edict of Truth off of this, but because you have access to so many varied spell options in this list, with like Story of a Lifetime, or doing a Scorching Blast, or even even just using a Riven Earth, or like a Fire Chain. When you get to play Daria, it survives, and then you get your numbers, things are going to get pretty ridiculous for your opponent. You're going to out-tempo them and easily secure the game. But it is notable that getting 5 followers in this deck takes effort, and it takes, like, you have to be purposefully in your plays in order to get there. This deck takes a lot of patience and timing, because again, you are essentially running 6 mediocre or relatively bad cards in your deck in order to play a completely different package. I am not aware of regular mages being able to play this deck without the Linkle package currently. If you are able to do that, by all means, your deck could potentially improve in quality, but you are missing out on some powerful options here. And also, same thing with the Crystal Fencer. You can put these from hand into the EX and then create them as live opportunities. Merlin. I'm going to be honest, folks. 1 Merlin here makes sense. 2 Merlins is okay. 3 Merlins, absolutely not. Do not do this. We are not talking about this, folks. 3 Merlins is ridiculously optimistic these days. It's not working, folks. 3 mana to search a spell. Alright, that's fantastic, right? You are happy with doing that. But having to pay for the Evo, as expensive as it is really tough. You do have some good options to take advantage of, right? But essentially, a lot of them would be happening the turn after, not in the same turn. Unless you're doing the late game combo of playing Merlin, searching Chain Lightning, and then playing it from hand, evoing it to copy it from the graveyard, and that's fantastic. Or searching whatever spell you're needing, copying a Scorching Blast, which is fine. That's a really good play. If you have the numbers already, now Merlin starts to get really crazy. If you have a second follower on the field, you've already searched a high-impact spell that you definitely want for the end of the game. And then on top of that, you're going to be able to potentially remove a card off the opponent's side of the field and draw 2. So you've effectively added 3 cards to your hand. That's really good. But by itself, without all of this setup, Merlin kind of a little bit dookie. I'm going to be real. But it's an important part of the deck regardless. Your ratio that you pick will be valid, but just know that Merlin is losing a lot of its luster these days. And as we move on, not only is Rune suffering in the future sets, but yeah, Merlin's definitely taking a tank, I'm going to be real. And then the peak part of this deck was really good in Omen Mages, but not nearly as valued as it is in this deck. Yukishima is the win condition. You need to see Yukishimas in order to like be able to differentiate this deck from any of the past regular mages. Regular Mage in the past was a fine deck that really lacked a play on turn 4, turn 5, up until turn 6. Your deck was pretty lackluster and unimpactful. Now, Yukishima's here, and we get to do something on turn 4. We are happy with that. That's incredible. But, and it's a huge but, you need to see him. If you look at this deck and you were to compare this to any of the other lists in the past, like any other, you literally only have 6 new cards in the entire deck. This is still just regular mages. The exact same deck with 6 new cards and then changing a few things out. If you don't see those cards, you're playing an outdated deck. When you do see those cards, incredible. Yukishima allows you to play the next festive card that costs 3 or less, or mage card that costs 3 or less, and that card is now free, essentially. And when you play a festive card that costs 3 or less, or a mage card that costs 3 or less, not once per turn you ping something for 2. Yukishima will be staying on the board if your opponent allows it. Naturally, it's a 3/5, so it's tanky, but if your opponent can remove this consistently, again, you're playing an old mage list, and you might struggle. But if it lives a turn, 2 turns, you're in control of the game. It's almost impossible because you're going to be able to do so many discounted plays on your turn that, I mean, like, it's borderline impossible for them to even keep followers on the field because you're going to keep pinging things for free. Incredible card, easy 3 of. I can tell you from trying to play the game, if you see 0, you're going to be struggling a lot, and it very well likely lose the game, unfortunately. If you see 1, that could be the only one that you need throughout the game, and it very well could get you to the end, but it's not going to be convincing. Seeing 2 Yukishimas, all right, we're talking. Your win percentage has just started reaching to probably about like 70%, something solid, like you're having a really good game. If you see 3, sure, you probably have won that game, but like you winning the game is directly related to the amount of Yukishimas you see, and almost not that much else. And you have plenty of ways to see it. You have plenty of card draw. You have ways to grab it off the top with Daria, and then also Story of a Lifetime. So you will find it. But there are definitely games, due to pure randomness, right, pure chance, that you won't see Yukishima, and I just want you to prepare yourself for that. Because it'll be tough, you'll be frustrated, but if you understand the reasoning about what happened that game, and maybe it was the Yukishima count, like you just didn't see him, it hopefully helps you digest the rest of the game, and understand that if you saw Yukishima, chances are it would have changed. Maybe not, but who knows. So that's going to be the deck. I am a fan of regular mages, but I don't think it is the strongest deck in the format. People really seem to prefer it over in Europe, because I didn't see those kinds of numbers at Toronto. But I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, so that's 4 Boomfish out of 5. It's a good deck, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.